Prime Minister Narendra Modi lands in Abu Dhabi, and suddenly, two UAE Air Force F-16 fighter jets appear beside Air India One. Not commercial escorts, not symbolic flypasts. These were combat aircraft, the same UAE fighter jets that were recently part of regional air defense operations during the Iran conflict. And just like that, a routine diplomatic stopover turned into something much, much bigger, because this visit was not only about oil deals or investment promises. It was about a rapidly changing West Asia, a nervous Gulf, a frustrated Pakistan, an angry Iran, and India quietly building a new strategic playbook for one of the most volatile regions on earth. The Gulf today is not the calm economic zone India dealt with 20 years ago. It is now a region where drones, missiles, and naval blockades can trigger oil shocks overnight. And India has enormous stakes there. Nearly 9 million Indians live across the Gulf region. Millions of families back home depend on remittances from West Asia. India imports more than 80% of its crude oil, much of it from Gulf nations. So when the Gulf shakes, India feels the tremors immediately. Which is why Prime Minister Modi publicly thanked the UAE leadership, not just for the honor, but also for protecting Indians during the recent regional crisis. Now, officially, the headlines from the visit focused on energy. India and the UAE signed agreements on strategic petroleum reserves and liquefied petroleum gas cooperation. Now, all of this is very important. They're critical deals. India is one of the world's most energy-hungry economies. Any disruption in oil supply can hit growth, inflation, and household budgets almost instantly. But beneath the energy agreements, another partnership is quietly accelerating: defense. And this is where the story becomes truly interesting. Prime Minister Modi and UAE President Mohammed bin Zayed signed an agreement on framework for the strategic defense partnership. Now that sounds bureaucratic, but the implications are massive. Because this is not just about military drills anymore. India and the UAE are now talking about joint development of defense technologies, co-production, intelligence sharing, maritime security, counter-terror cooperation. That marks a huge shift in the Gulf's strategic landscape. For decades, India's Gulf policy was mostly, transactional. Buy oil, protect workers, avoid taking sides. But now, India is becoming part of UAE's trusted security circle, and that changes equations across West Asia. Because here's the larger backdrop. The Gulf is no longer politically united. Saudi Arabia and the UAE may appear aligned publicly, but underneath, competition and mistrust are growing, especially after the Iran conflict. Reports suggest that the UAE bore significant economic and reputational damage during regional hostilities. Tourism slowed, investor confidence took a hit, questions emerged over Gulf security vulnerabilities. And the UAE believes part of that vulnerability comes from Iran's growing regional aggression. Which is why Abu Dhabi has moved even closer to Israel after the Abraham Accords. That relationship matters enormously because while Saudi Arabia slowed its normalization track with Israel after the Gaza war, the UAE largely stayed committed. And now you can see two competing Gulf approaches emerging. Saudi Arabia wants to balance regional opinion and Islamic leadership responsibilities. The UAE, on the other hand, wants hard security guarantees and strategic deterrence, and that divergence is quietly reshaping alliances. Now enter Pakistan. For years, Pakistan believed that its religious identity and military relationships guaranteed permanent leverage in the Gulf. But that assumption is weakening. The UAE is increasingly frustrated with Islamabad. One major reason dates back to Afghanistan. In 2017, 5 UAE diplomats were killed in a terror attack in Afghanistan. Abu Dhabi has long blamed Pakistan-linked dynamics and the Taliban's return for destabilizing the region. Then came another problem. Pakistan moved closer to UAE's rival Saudi Arabia, precisely when the Saudi-UAE tensions were widening. And during the Iran crisis, Islamabad tried to maintain neutrality and even pushed mediation efforts. All that at a time when the UAE wanted a much harder regional line against Tehran. From Abu Dhabi's perspective, Pakistan was no longer acting like a reliable strategic partner, and that opened up space for India. Notice the contrast carefully. Pakistan brings instability concerns. India brings markets, investments, technology, manpower. That is a very attractive combination for Gulf states trying to future-proof themselves. And then comes the most sensitive layer of all, Israel. India, Israel and the UAE do not have a formal alliance. There is no NATO-style pact, but increasingly these countries share overlapping security concerns. Iranian missiles, drone warfare, maritime disruptions, terror networks, supply chain vulnerabilities, and when countries repeatedly face similar threats, strategic convergence naturally begins. Quietly, without dramatic announcements, that is exactly what we are seeing today. India has strong defense ties with Israel, strong economic ties with the UAE, deepening relations with Saudi, and still maintains working ties with Iran. That balancing act is becoming harder every year. But Delhi believes staying connected to every major player gives India leverage in a fragmented region. Because unlike the US, India cannot simply walk away from West Asia. India is geographically, economically, and demographically tied to the region. And that brings us to the bigger picture. What happened in Abu Dhabi was not just another diplomatic visit. It was India unveiling a new West Asia doctrine. The old model was passive: buy oil, stay neutral, avoid entanglements. The new model is far more strategic: build energy reserves, secure shipping lanes, expand defense partnerships, protect diaspora networks, increase investments, stay embedded in every major regional equation. Because Delhi now knows that global wars no longer remain far away conflicts. A missile strike in West Asia can affect fuel prices in Delhi within days. A naval blockade in Hormuz can hit Indian manufacturing. A Gulf crisis can directly impact millions of Indian families. And that is why India is quietly preparing for a far more unstable decade ahead. Not with loud military alliances, but with strategic relationships, flexible partnerships, and carefully calibrated diplomacy.